Hi guys, so today on the bench we have this Hitachi 3D80 boombox. This is from 1986. This particular one is going to be a restoration video. This one is all bad as far as I can tell. So the grills here are dented in. This one's got a dent on it. This middle one also, there's a dent here, and the end one here is dented. Even the badge here is hanging off, this metal badge. As well as that, we have dirt in the unit. So if you can see the top there, it's very, very crusty. There's all sorts of muck and dust in there. Everywhere you look, it's ingrained with muck. I think this has been probably left in a garage or outside or somewhere. But you can see there, it's all ingrained in the controls. Not very nice at all. Also, as well as the cosmetic appearance, nothing seems to work very well. So the unit does power on. Neither of the tape decks work. I can't hear anything moving inside. They could be moving, and it may be the belts that have gone, so that may not be such a big issue. Both doors do open, but like I said, the capstan and the spindles in there don't turn at all. Then if we switch this to radio, it doesn't tune in to any station. So I don't think the radio is working either. I've not tried the line in yet, so possibly that is still okay. So there's a few things to sort out here. This video is going to be a restoration on this, so I'm going to be taking it totally apart. First of all, clean all the plastics, get everything looking good, hopefully sort this grill out. So fortunately the legend in the center here, this gold writing, is not in bad shape at all. It's the if this is damaged, it's difficult to touch this up. You can get some gold paint, but it doesn't look right. It's difficult to get it looking right if you're touching that up. The black parts on here, if there's anything scratched off, then I can touch them up with some black paint. Black enamel paint is the best. The little pots that you get for building the plastic kits, enamel paint from a model shop. That's the best thing I've found for this. So yeah, we'll take it all apart, and we'll see what needs doing. This could be a long video, depending on what needs doing. So what we'll be doing with this, first of all, is strip it all down and get the case cleaned, get all the plastics cleaned, and you can see how this comes apart, and you can see what is inside, what's entailed in doing this. If I remember rightly, I've opened up one of these before, and if I remember rightly, these grills don't come out very easily. It'd be best if we can remove these grills completely. So I just have to refresh my memory as to how they fit inside. I think the last one I did, I kept the grills intact and sort of managed to clean behind them. But if I can get these taken out, then I will do. So here we are. All the parts are now stripped down from that boombox, and as you can see, it's pretty horrible. It is full of muck everywhere you look. These speakers got piles of dust on them. Luckily though, the speakers are in good shape in terms of the rubber and the paper cones. These sometimes just deteriorate altogether, especially if they're in a damp environment. Then this paper gets very brittle and just breaks up. But these are okay. This is the power supply and amplifier board. So you can see the mains coming in there. This is the linear transformer. You see the bridge rectifier there, 4 diodes. And this is the amplifier section here. So there's 2 amplifier chips on there for the 4 channels. These are the power level meters that you saw on the front of the unit. So this is it's 5 LEDs on each side. It gives the impression when you turn it on that this is stereo, but looking at the circuit here, they're not. These are just in series, so each LED is in series with each other. So this is just a mono display, just mirrored on each side, which is a shame. We've got the graphic equalizer there, and this board is the main board. So you've got the radio section on this side, and we've got the tape controls on this side. So here we have the record play switch. These are just about to see it there. These are the switches that determine whether it's record or play. This is always, we see these on old stereo cassettes, and there's a mechanism, a physical connection between here and the record button on the tape deck that pushes this little bar in, switches over between playback and record. They usually become full of muck and need cleaning out with some contact cleaner. And then we've got our cassette deck. Which again looks filthy. That is all going to have to be cleaned and serviced. Now this wasn't running at all when I tried it, so the belt actually is in decent shape. So maybe the motors failed on this or something else. We'll take a look at that. And what else? Basically just all the plastics need cleaning. And look at that, it's just full of grime and muck. Horrible. So I think the first thing I'll do is get all these plastics into a bowl or in the bath or in a sink. I'll get some hot soapy water and we'll get all those cleaned up. We get all the plastics cleaned. Then I'll concentrate perhaps on the speakers. I want these speakers looking better. That light grey there, it's just faded. They used to be black. And these chrome centres here, will clean those up. So I will probably spray paint these cones. That's what I normally do. Just put a light coating of spray paint on there. Make these black again. And then clean up these centre parts with some polish. But yeah, it comes apart quite easily. This is that was the microphone. Don't know who'd be using a microphone on these to record on, but it's full of muck, so we'll clean that out. So yeah, let's get these plastics cleaned, and then we will continue with some of the repairs. So before I wash these, I just thought I'd see if I could get these grills off, and as I said before, I've had one of these machines previously and I got stuck with the grills. The same on this one. I think they are just glued in. These channels here that run around the grill, I think the grill sits in there. There's a little bit of grill sticking out there, but that's not held in by anything. So I think it's glued all the way around. And I think it's, I did try and heat it up as well. So I heated up this with a hot air gun on a low temperature. Tried to melt the glue, but it just didn't budge at all. So I'm not going to bother with that. Last time I did this, I managed to get some water up inside these grills and clean the back. So this chrome parts, you can get a finger in with a cloth and just run round and clean those. So the majority of that can be cleaned out. What I will do though is I'll try and get these grills flattened out. So you see there's quite a dent on that one, and the center, and on that one. And the most part you can just push them back into place. So that's pretty much got that one already. What I'll do is I'll put that on a flat surface. I'll get something flat and just work my way around and see if I can straighten these grills out completely. But it looks as though they'll, there's no bad creases in there, so I think that will pop out for the most part. So those grills look better now. They're pretty good. Let's see if I can lift this badge off, because I want to straighten it out and re-glue it down. So I'm just going to see if I can take that off. I should be able to bend that back into place and re-glue it on once I've cleaned these. Looks like it's got the original plastic on there still, so there might be a good surface under there. Right, let's get these plastics cleaned up and then we can continue. So as you've just seen, I've freshened up these speakers. A little bit of spray paint, a little bit of black spray paint on the paper, and these are back to pretty much looking the way they were when they were new. Polished the center caps, got rid of the dust off there, and then, like I said, just give it a quick blast of spray paint. And it's not going to affect these speakers at all. If anything, it's going to make the speakers better. The paint will make these paper cones more rigid. These paper cones go a bit soft over time, so putting some spray paint on there, it's probably going to make a better sound quality with stiffening up these cones a little bit. But yeah, they look good. Now the other parts I have started to clean. I've got the front here. Now I've not started on the grills yet. I have pushed the grills out, but I haven't touched up the paint at all on these. What I have been doing is trying to get the plastics looking better. So most of the plastic is not too bad. I've cleaned it up. But the top, unfortunately, as you can probably see there, there's a mark along the front here. It looks as though it's had a piece of tape actually across the top and the front, running pretty much the full length of that front. And I think it's been on that long that it's melted the plastic a little bit. So what I've tried to do, I've tried to scrape this off with some plastic tools and some metal tools, just being careful not to go too deep. And I have, you might not be able to see, but you see the areas where it's still there. There's like a little mark, and then there's a flat piece where I've scraped it off. So I think I've done as much as I can there. It's a bit of a shame, but I think that's going to be the only thing that lets the front of this down. So I don't think there's much more I can do with that. I don't want to go too far on the front because these graphics are going to come off as well. So like I said, I've scraped off the high points, I've given it a polish, and that's pretty much all we're going to be able to do with that. The badge on here, if you remember, was lifted up and bent. It's an aluminium badge, and I've managed to straighten that out. It's actually still got the plastic on it. You can see there the original plastic. You get that sometimes where people haven't taken it off. Now this can come off correctly, or it can over time, it sticks to the metal. It doesn't come off properly, so let's have a look. It is coming off fine. A very old plastic there coming off. There we go. Yeah, there's a little bit of a scratch in the middle there where it's been bent over, but that's about as good as we can get that. I might touch that up with a bit of black paint, but that's pretty nice. So I just need to glue that back in place. These are some of the other plastics. We've got the battery compartment lid, and then we've got the buttons for the controls. They've all been cleaned up, ready to go back on. This is the felt piece that goes onto the graphic equalizer. So all I've done with that is just carefully hoover this, get all the dust off. This is not too bad at the moment, but they do get very fragile. They can just sort of fall apart over time, so just be careful with it. If need be, I can just cut a new piece of felt on these players. That's what I've done in the past, and then just cut some slots in, because you're only going to see the edge of it anyway, so any black felt will do for that. Volume controls or slider controls, you can easily replace that, but this one's not too bad. I'm going to put this one back in. So this top piece has come up quite nice after it being washed. There's still a few little marks on there. You can see there, just where it's had stickers and bits of muck on there. So what I'm going to do is just go over this first with a general cleaner. Which is just going to get rid of any of those ground in dirt that we didn't get from washing it. And then once we've done this, we can go over it with a polish, just a general purpose polish. You see the muck that's coming off there, even though it's been washed. So you do have to go over these things a few times with different solutions. Just be careful what you use, that it's not too aggressive on the plastic, because you don't want to be taking off these graphics on the front, because that'll ruin your day. So just take your time, little by little, and just get as much of that dirt and grease off that you can. Depends on how bad they are as to exactly what you're going to need to do. But I would do those 3 stages generally. Wash soapy water in the sink, then a general purpose cleaner. What I'm using is this one. And then a general purpose polish, and the one I use for that is normally this one. And then you should be in a good place. So let me continue with this and I will show you the results. This is what it looks like now after that cleaning process, and it's looking pretty good now. The only thing that remains behind are any small scratches that might be on the plastic. Now the last thing to do with this is to get into all the little nooks and crannies, so you might be able to see the bottom of these slider channels. There's still some dust and muck in the corners, and you will see this when the switches are back in, so you need to deal with that. Any little areas like in here that you can't get to with the previous cloths, what I use is just some cotton buds, and I'll put a little bit of polish on there. And then just get that down in all the nooks and crannies. See there, muck coming off. So this bit takes a little bit of time to get right. You've just got to be careful and make sure you get into all these areas. Yeah, you see there the muck that's still left behind, even after all that cleaning. So the more time you spend now, the better the end result. So I'll continue with that. So I'm just about complete with this piece now. I've gone over with the polish. There's a bit of a scratch, a bit of a deep scratch on the front there, but I can't do much about that. I could get some polishing compound, some plastic polishing compound, and go over that screen, but I don't have it, and I think I'm just about where I want to be with this piece. The rest of it is not in 100% condition. So I mean, if the thing was absolutely mint and there was just some scratches on this plastic, then yes, I'd get the compound and spend some more time with it. But this kind of fits in with the rest of the condition of the machine. Gone round all of these switch apertures and cleaned off all the insides. They're all nice and clean. The tuning wheel, all in these little grooves on the tuning wheel, that's all clean. Also the screw holes, don't forget the screw holes, because dust collects in the bottom of these, so get your cotton bud and clean the bottom of those screw holes out. The back, there's not much to do on the back. it's been cleaned in the soapy water already, so all the dust is gone. The only thing to think about is this tuning indicator. There is some grease on there. Now this grease is still good, so I'm not re-greased it, but just check that there's a little bit of grease on the back there for that to run along. And also just check that the cord is tight. Now it is under tension because of this spring, so it should never become loose, but if it does, you may need to shorten the string. Just undo that knot, retie it so it's a bit tighter, and the spring will take over. But again, this one looks good. So the next thing I want to look at is the cassette deck. What I'll first do is just give it a quick clean up. So I'll get rid of most of the dust around here again with a little brush and perhaps some cotton buds with some isopropyl alcohol, just to clean off any old grease that's on these cogs, and then we can always place down a new bit of grease when it's complete. Clean these switches up. There's dirt lodged in those switches there. And once I've done that, I will connect it up and we'll see what's wrong with this. If you remember, these wheels weren't turning at all, so I don't know whether it's a faulty motor or whether these belts were not good. The belts don't seem too bad, to be honest. I'll probably replace them anyway, but they seem okay. So I'll give it a quick clean, and then what I'll try and do is attach it to the circuitry outside of the case. So I'll place the circuitry down, we'll plug it together and see what's wrong with this. Those buttons look better now. They look almost brand new, those buttons. So those buttons look a lot better now. They look almost brand new. There's quite a lot of dirt in those grooves in the switch buttons at the bottom, so you had to get a piece of tissue and sort of work your way along all those grooves to get it out. But that's looking good. Now with the decks themselves, you don't need to worry too much about most of this area here. If there's any dust and bits of muck or whatever trapped on these cogs, then of course you can clean it off, best with something like a cotton bud like this. You can just go around and get the bits that are in the way there. Because of course if these get trapped in the cogs themselves, then you're going to have problems. And then this bit down here around the playhead, this is all exposed when you open the cassette door, so this is liable to dust and hair and other bits and pieces. I've seen all sorts in here. So just lightly, carefully work your way around all those areas with the cotton bud. Because there's grease on this, you'll find that all the bits stick to the cotton bud. The cotton bud will pick up the grease, and then all the dust and hair and whatnot that's in here will get picked up too. So you'll end up with cotton bud with all sorts on it. But especially hair is a bad thing to have around here, because if that gets in between the tape and the playhead, then it'll obviously cause audio problems. It can also be dragged into the cassette tape itself as it's going through, and that'll end up in your tape. So give this a good clean around all this, around the cassette head and the capstan and the rollers. I think we're good. So I've still got the capstan to clean, still got the cassette playhead to clean. But yeah, that is looking pretty good. Also, sometimes in these decks you see down here this long yellowish piece, and the main belts are running against it. This is a cleaner which the belts run against, so this is meant to pick up any bits and grease off the belt and deposit them on that piece. So You see there, it's coming up with dust. So again, just get a cotton bud and clean that off. And just in the base as well, just around anywhere you can see where there's excess of dust and muck, just to clean that out. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll connect this up. I'll see if I can connect it up outside of the box, and we'll give this cassette deck a try. One thing to watch out for with these older machines, the ones with the rewirable plugs, is definitely check the fuse type that you've got in there. This one is typical of a machine where it's been fitted with the incorrect fuse. It's 13 amps. 13 amps is totally the wrong fuse for this type of device. I always replace them with a 3 amp fuse when I get these. So keep a stock of 3 amp in, and then just throw this one away. When you buy, or when you used to buy these plugs, you don't buy rewirable plugs anymore, but when you used to buy them, they used to come fitted with a 13 amp fuse as standard, and a lot of people just put them straight onto the equipment without changing the fuse. Now this one does have another internal fuse, which is 2 amps. So this fuse would have blown before this one, but it's always good not to have that 13 amp fuse in there, because if this didn't have a fuse, or the fuse failed, or something else went wrong with it, the cable, then it would draw 13 amps before this thought about blowing. So yeah, always switch that out. So I've connected the cassette deck to the circuits. I don't recommend you do this outside the casing, because there is an element of risk here. The mains voltage is present on a couple of the components here, these fuses for example, so there is an element of risk there. The power switch is safe to handle because this switch is the low voltage side. Unusual that, normally you would have the power switch in the mains itself, but so when you plug this in, it's powered all the time regardless of whether the unit is switched on or not. So yeah, this is handling the 12 volts, this switch. So we switch it on. I've connected the speakers as well. So what was happening before was when we pressed the play button, the reels didn't move at all. So let's have a look. Okay, so the capstan is moving, but the take-up reel isn't. Oh, you can see that belt there is pretty poor. That's the belt for the counter. We'll need to replace that. But yeah, this should be turning, and it's not. Capstan is turning. So if we put a tape in this and press play, what would happen is that tape would just chew up. It would just spool at the other side of that capstan and get into a tangled mess without the take-up spool isn't taking up that tape. So let's see if we can determine what's happening here. So it's one motor for both capstans. As you can see, they're spinning just fine. These belts seem okay. So there should be a belt on here. That black guide there, there's some residue of sticky belt on there, and there's another pulley underneath. It's actually on the capstan, but it's underneath the capstan, a smaller pulley which the belt goes round. So these are powered all of the time with the capstan, or supposed to be. So it's odd that these belts have totally disappeared and these ones are still okay. Perhaps these have been replaced afterward. So what I need to do is clean out all of this black gunk that's the remains of the belt. Very sticky, horrible black goop. And the same on the back of this capstan. Probably take the capstan out to do that. And then I will fit a new belt. That should sort out the rewind and fast forward. So I scraped off most of the old belt off these pulleys, and I'm just using a cotton bud with some isopropyl alcohol. This one's pretty clean. Let's check this one. I think this one's got a bit more on it. Yeah. So just keep going over the pulley until it's clean. That should do. Now to get to the other pulley that's underneath the capstan, we're going to have to take these capstans off. So take these belts off. This one. Capstans are normally held on by a small clip. Small washer. So when you take those off, just make sure you grab the washer that's retaining as well. You don't want to lose that. You can see there the remains of that belt. So I'll do the same with this. Isopropyl alcohol, cotton bud, clean this pulley up, same with the other capstan, and then we'll get those new belts fitted. Belts have been fitted, so you can see there's one belt here, new belt there, and then I've replaced these capstan belts as well, so there's 4 belts on the back, and new counter belt there. There's also a second counter belt there, so there's 6 belts in all in this double cassette deck. So let's plug it in, see if this now operates. Yep, so capstans are working as they did before, and the take-up spool is now working. I didn't think that was working for a moment. The pause is on. There we go. I'm just going to go ahead and clean these heads now. So, record and playback head on this side. They're pretty clean already, those. Also clean this erase head. So this erase head is, there's 2 types of erase head you can get in these decks. There is a permanent magnet, which is this one. It basically just swings this in and out of the way. So the magnet's always there, it's just lower down so it doesn't affect the tape. And then when you press record, this swings up into position. The other type is an electromagnet, which is in the same position as the playhead, but it's over here, but it's always touching the tape, and it's not until it's energized by the circuit that it becomes a magnet and erases that tape. Capston's already clean. Just give the pinch roller a little clean. I'm just moving the wheel round as I brush this with the cotton bud. Isopropyl alcohol again. These capstons can be replaced cheaply if they're badly worn, but these ones seem fine. They're just a bit grubby. See the muck coming off there. So it's been a couple of weeks since the last bit of video that you've seen, and I've been working on repairing the various bits that were broken on the circuit. So I've fixed up the tape deck, basically what you saw before, but I've fitted the belts here and I've tested this out, and this is all working as it should be. I've cleaned it up, cleaned the heads, cleaned the capstons, cleaned all the tape path components, and this is sounding good. Now the circuit itself, the electrolytic capacitors, now I found a couple I looked at the circuit diagram, found a couple in the tape path and replaced them one by one. As I replaced these capacitors, the sound restored, it got better with each one really. So I actually ended up recapping the whole thing. So every electrolytic capacitor that you see here has been replaced. These are all brand new, and I didn't want to leave it with any that were substandard. You'll see this with a lot of old equipment, the capacitors, normally there's telltale signs. They have a little bulge at the top. So these capacitors you see, you might be able to see there's a little cross at the top, and this one's got 3 lines on it, and that is where the top of the can is scored, and that is to make this a little bit weaker, so that if there is pressure built up inside, this is able to expand up, and you'll see the top of them domed a little bit. Now none of these were domed, but there was obviously something wrong with them, so maybe they're dried up inside. So like I say, I've replaced all of these capacitors. Now the next thing that was the issue was the radio. The radio wasn't tuning in at all, and that was down to this IC here. This is a Toshiba TA7840AP, and it's a dedicated radio cassette IC, and it is described as an AM/FM IF processor. Now there's a number of bits within that, so I'll put the block diagram on the screen for you to have a look at, but there's amplifiers in there, IF amplifiers. So this isn't an audio chip. The audio signal doesn't go through here, it's just the IF frequency, and there's a switch in there which allows you to switch between AM and FM, and there's some oscillators and some amplifiers, other bits and pieces. I bought another one of those and put it in, and lo and behold, the radio worked. So switch it on now, and it's actually not going to tune in because there's no aerial. You might have to take my word for it. Let's try medium wave. I think there's too much electrical interference here for medium wave. Yeah, we're not going to get anything there, but trust me, it does. I put an FM aerial on here and it does work. The next thing that I did was to change the op amp. So the op amp that was in here, that's a little 8-pin package here, that because it's an old equipment, the op amp of the day was not as good as the op amps you can get now, and they're very cheap. So for the price of it, they're all pin for pin compatible, most of them are. So I found one that was, and I've put that in there. In particular, the older ones don't have the frequency response that the new ones do. So with that in place, I could notably hear that the sound was better, the sound quality was better with this op amp in. So I've changed that. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but it's a good little upgrade if you've got the circuit out. So now it sounds really good. Let's switch it to line input, and I will just plug in an audio source. And the graphic equalizer, this is all being cleaned, volume controls. This all works as it should. And it sounds really good. These speakers will obviously sound better once they're in the enclosure, because the sound box behind them obviously gives a lot more bass, so there's not a lot of bass coming out of this. But I think as far as the repairs are going, this is all done now. So the next thing for me to do is to put this back into the box, and I'll resume the video then, and I can show you what the finished product looks like. So it's all back together now, and this looks considerably better than it did when we started. So I've touched up a few areas on this grill, sorted the dents out, and this is looking good. It looks better from this angle here because there's a light right overhead, so when we drop it down you can still see there's still some discoloration and some muck behind this grill, but as I said, getting these grills off is not easy. I tried once and it destroyed the grill, so I've never taken one off since. But if you know a way of doing that successfully, perhaps you could leave it in the comments below. But the rest of it is really nice. It's come up well. You can see there. It's not bad at all. As I said, the only downside is this this mark, which it's almost melted the plastic, whatever's been on there. I think there's probably been some self-adhesive on there. It's been on there for that long that it's reacted with the plastic. But I'm happy with that. That's quite nice. And the sound quality out of this is much improved to what it was. So, well, of course, when I got it, it was there was a fault with it. It wasn't playing at all. But now with the new op amp and all those capacitors, recapping these does wonders for the amplifier, for the power amp. So if you get one of these old machines and you recap it, especially the power supply and around the amplifier ICs, you'll find the bass is a lot sharper. There's it sounds a lot louder as well, less distortion. It's all good things to happen when you recap it. So it is worth doing that. I wasn't going to do all of them, but I did in the end. Just went through them all because all the ones I started replacing just started sounding better on each one. So I thought, oh, let's just get them all done. So that is it. Let me just fire it up.
Big favour. We need you as a witness against Brian Altman in a trial that is starting soon.
Oh, they know Brian. He would occasionally come to the bank to see Joseph.
So is the radio.
At least you remember him. You'll remember a conversation he had with Joey that you overheard.
What conversation?
I'll tell you about that on the way to your old house.
If I were to give evidence, someone would bring up my prison record to discredit me.
We'll take care of that.
All rise.
Mr. Braden, for the record, you are not representing...
So the reception isn't 100% in this room because of all the electrical bits going on. All these lights look nice, all cleaned up, nice and bright. And we can switch it to the external input. just to hear what the sound quality is like again now its speakers are back in the box. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this restoration video of this Hitachi 3D80 boombox. I'm quite happy with it. It's turned out well. It's fully working now. I do have another video that I'm working on at the moment with a similar boombox, and I install an Amazon Alexa unit into that. So if you're interested in that, subscribe to my channel. You'll get notified as soon as that gets released. But for the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.